Refunds are either terrible anti-capitalistic policies or possibly the best thing a seller can implement to improve sales. Let's chat about it down below, but first, my opinion. I'm Tarmack, and this is Feature Creep. When gamers throw their support behind a developer in talking about refunds, the general line of defense is relatively consistent. If a developer allowed or was forced to accept more open refund policies, what would happen is that gamers would buy a game, finish the game, and then refund it whether they liked the game or not. And this revolving $60 or so would keep that gamer in new games forever without developers making any money. There are some intricacies to the argument which have some element of validity, but I think I'm being, for the most part, inclusive in how the argument is usually portrayed. So, let's break that position down. It first assumes that more consumer-friendly refund policies are endless and without moderation. This, I think, is relatively easy to debunk by virtue of talking about Costco. You do have a very friendly refund policy at Costco, but they're aware of how often you refund products because of the tie-in to your Costco membership card. They can, will, and do remove abusers of the system. Steam or any of the online retailers for games would be no different. Second, the position assumes that gamers are in some significant sense vile people who won't pay for things unless forced. The piracy side of the world is where this part of the argument falls apart. There are a significant number of people who do pirate games for sure, but they're also the kind of folks who aren't going to bother to buy a game and refund it later unless it hasn't been cracked yet, in which case the buy and refund was never a legitimate sale anyways. I will grant that this could represent a small increase in transaction fees, but then those could easily be worked into a high-volume refund user's profile where they become responsible for transaction fees beyond the first refund or two. Third, the position assumes that a significant portion of gamers don't want to keep their games in order to play them later. I can't necessarily speak to this outside of anecdotal evidence, but I think it's relatively safe to say that gamers like having a library of games to play. It may be a small library or a larger one, but having choice is often a good thing, and with how many of us have substantial Steam libraries of unplayed games, that choice can certainly be overused. There's an aspect of people referred to in psychology as the endowment effect. The effect is basically that a person who owns something assigns a higher value to that something than someone who does not own the thing. This is used and abused in sales all the time, with high-pressure sales tactics and, not surprisingly, good refund policies. Because the moment you've made a purchase, psychologically you have begun to value the item you purchased more than before you bought it. It sounds complicated, but the end result is rather simple. The longer you own something, the less likely you want to not own it, meaning that returns scale down in quantity the further we move away from the date you purchase something. The reason that I bring this up is because in the game industry, refund windows are extremely short. We have everything from no refund at all, 2 hours of playtime, or as much as 30 days, no questions asked. The 2 hours of playtime is Steam, and the 30 days, even if you downloaded and played, is GOG.com. The problem with a short refund window is that from the gamer's perspective, the fuse is lit. Gamers concerned about whether they will enjoy a game are hyper aware of that first 2 hour block because that's the only time they can feel safe in their purchase. And developers know that, so front-loading the first 2 hours with the most exciting content your game has is a no-brainer. The thing is that by being hyper aware of and rushed to make a decision on do I keep this game or refund this game, it's at the front of gamers' minds. If you contrast that with a 30-day or longer window, what will and does happen is that the endowment effect starts to kick in. The player can relax and give the game a good old college try, maybe even taking a break or two here and there. And by the time they've gotten to the 30-day window, unless something really frosts them about the game experience, chances are they won't refund it. Now they own it. It's theirs. They're invested in the fact that they own it, and they're not rushed to make a snap decision. In fact, I would not be surprised if the 2 hour playtime refund window actually causes more refunds than it would otherwise, if players had a chance to really dive in and get to enjoy a game. Some of these titles take a bit of time and have a slow burn at the beginning, but can be very rewarding experiences. It's probably worth addressing the ownership aspect of games as well. Yes, it's absolutely true that in most cases, barring DRM-free situations, end-user license agreements for software are a license for use, not really deemed home ownership in the same way a kitchen spoon might be. However, as far as gamers are concerned, it is clear that we as a collective still feel the same ownership over our games, and we come to blows with companies who even hint at taking these bought and paid for products away from us. As such, all of the endowment effect theory remains intact. I've always been more interested in consumer benefit than corporate benefit where it comes to games. I've got a soft spot for indie developers, but the frank truth of the matter is that good games don't sell well. Only great games do. And bad games are barely worth even considering, especially where Steam is concerned. Steam has little to no benefit for small developers trying to sell a product like it used to. And it's all about the marketing campaign over social media that sells titles these days. That's definitely fraught with risk for gamers. Picking a game that could either be terrible or really not their cup of tea based on reviews, which are in many cases suspect at best. What wider-ranging game refund policies do on the flip side is remove that risk. And much like the rest of life, when the risk is reduced, people are far more free with their money. I covered some of this years ago, but a particular quote rings true even now. It came from the Zappos VP of Services and Operations, Craig Adkins. Quote, "Our best customers have the highest return rates, but they're also the ones that spend the most money with us and are our most profitable customers." End quote. And this is from an online shoe store who is basically openly inviting people to use online purchases as a method of just trying on shoes because they have free two-way shipping and a 365-day return policy. Zappos gets it. You invite people into your business in the most friendly way possible. You take as much perceived risk away from them as you can, and the end result is that they spend far more money buying products from you. This exact same scenario will work in video games. Gamers like big game libraries. They like returning to games over and over again. They like to own games, they like to try new games. But we're a fickle bunch, and many of us don't have as much money lying around as game developers might wish we did. And not only can a store like Steam or Epic know exactly how many games you buy and return, so they can set limits to prevent customers from being too abusive, they could quite literally set the precise maximum return rate that they're willing to accept on an account-by-account basis or a credit card basis for those with multiple accounts. The point being that I've thought for quite some time now that the refund structures in the game industry are archaic and wrong. They're unintentionally hampering their own sales revenue and hurting gamers at the same time. Why do people travel farther than they need to shop at Costco? Why do they shop at Zappos for shoes? In part, it's because there's no risk to buy from these companies. If a product turns out to be garbage, they'll give you your money back and thank you for your business. And then statistically, you'll go back into the store, spend your refunded cash, and more, usually, because they treated you well. Some developers have games so short and unfulfilling that they're worried gamers will simply buy them, finish them in a couple hours, and then rush for a refund. I have no sympathy for these devs because it means your game is too expensive, and that cost to time spent value proposition is bad. And hoisting the blame on the buyer is just a fragile ego move. I've never been convinced that games should be some unique, separate entity where normal consumer protection rules don't apply. These are products. They're subject to the same mechanisms with even fewer restrictions than retail, in that you don't need the added cost of a whole department to manage returns and pay for return shipping. It just happens within the store dashboards. Gamers not only deserve the ability to get refunds for their games without these silly 2 hours played or 14-day installed but never run, or what have you, ridiculous policies. And those policies are driven by people who are absolutely terrified that if they treated their customers better, they think they'll make less money. The evidence is to the contrary, and at the moment, the game industry is just leaving money on the table because their customers are worried about getting stuck with a new game that they didn't like. And to really put a pin in my point here when talking about your customers trusting you and how an amazing return policy takes away the risk of customer purchases, I have this. A study out of the University of Dallas in 2015 examining various factors related to product returns found a similar result to exactly what I'm talking about now and what I've been harping on for over 6 years. I've linked the study below for those who are looking for a little bit of light reading, but in short, it's a meta-analysis of 21 different papers on consumer refunds, and it found that more lenient refund policies absolutely increase refunds. However, more lenient refund policies increase new purchases by more than they increase refunds. The truth of the matter is that gamers are consumers. We spend our money, we want our products, and we want to be safe in knowing the products we buy are going to be good. To that end, the more safe we feel, the more money we are going to spend collectively. If developers and publishers want to make more money, they need to make us feel safe. And one of the ways they can do that is give us better return policies. Give me your thoughts on refund and return policies and all of that jazz in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Tarmack, and that's all I have to say.